This is Rumble, and I am Michael Moore, and welcome to this episode of Rumble with Michael Moore. We are recording this. It hasn't even been really 24 hours since we got the results in from this week's primary elections around the country, and the results were very, very good. On an overall basis, I would say it was probably one of many indications and actually, I think, public statements made by the electorate this year in terms of what they want to see done. And after having suffered through 5+ months of this pandemic, people are very, very clear about a number of things and the people they want representing them in Congress, in their state houses, in their prosecutor offices. It was a great day this Tuesday here and a great night. And it's been a great day after and 2 days after, whenever you're listening to this. It's something that we have been behind since we started Rumble a number of months ago, that we need a change. And we need a change on our side of things. There have been people that have maybe done good in the past or meant to do good or whatever, but we don't have time to wait anymore. And I think that's been very clear since the virus took hold, since the murder of George Floyd. Everything that everybody's been suffering through and for, and we're now the first week after the $600 of unemployment help was stripped from millions of Americans. And there are people listening to this, I know right now, that have had a very stress-filled week, wondering what you're going to do, how you're going to pay the rent. Will you be evicted? Will there be food? All of these unnecessary worries and fears. But as we've all learned in the past, it benefits those in power to have us jump higher. Be afraid. Be very afraid of us, those in power. Yes, be very afraid. Well, I think we're in the process of huge change and changes taking place. And so we woke up this morning. We were going to do something different tonight on the podcast. And then, we were feeling so good about what had happened yesterday in the primaries with the progressive wins, the state of Missouri voting, the people of Missouri, big red state, voting to expand Medicaid, something that their Republican governor and their president is very much against. And they just said to hell with that. And they voted Missouri to expand Medicaid. We're going to get into talking about all these races and what happened and where we go from here, because obviously our work is not over. But we thought, wow, really the best person, and she's probably not free today because it's the day after all these victories that she and her troops helped to make happen. So just on a lark, we gave her a call. She was and is very busy today, but decided to take a few minutes here with us to talk about our success last night. Our guest today is the executive director of Justice Democrats. This is the group, if you haven't heard of them, I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, they're the people who approached Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to run. They were behind a lot of people in the 2018 election who were running and had a number of victories, some losses, had a number of victories last night. But we first ran across the Justice Democrats people because we were out filming Alexandria while she was going door to door in the winter of early 18, when she was polling, I think around 2% in the New York polls and had no chance of winning. And one of the producers because I was making this film, Fahrenheit 11/9, wow, why are we going to, it costs us, sometimes it can cost up to $10,000 a day when you're shooting a movie. Why are we spending this money on somebody who's polling at 2%? And we just thought, one of our producers had gone and met her and knew a couple of the Justice Democrats people and said, hey, there's something going on here. Really? Yeah. And in fact, not just with she wasn't called AOC then, not just with her, but other districts around the country. We should really we need to know these Justice Democrats because they got something going here. And so I just said, okay. It's like, yeah, let's just spend the money. We have but listen, if you knew me or if you worked on my crew, that's how I work. It's just like something feels right and we just do it. And that's how we came to know Justice Democrats. And we followed Alexandria during her campaign. And then she, of course, won the primary. And then that was pretty much it after that. Well, it wasn't it, because once she took office, her and the squad and others, we began to see that things could be different. Things could be better. I'd like to welcome here as our guest, the executive director of Justice Democrats, one of its co-founders, and somebody, if you don't know her, you need to know her because she has been, and will be very much responsible for whether or not we elect progressive candidates to office and have some true power in this country. Please welcome Alexandra Rojas to Rumble. Welcome, Alexandra.
Thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you for all that you've done. So let's just get right into it. What happened on Tuesday of this week?
A political earthquake. I think what we saw were all of the opportunities that we as a movement have to, expand down ballot, especially at the federal level. And with Cori Bush in Missouri, this was just a huge upset.
Tell people who Cori is and what her background is and who she defeated.
Absolutely. Well, to set the scene a little bit, Cori Bush is, a candidate for Congress. She was running as a Justice Democrat. She was actually our first one that we launched back in 2017. And she was running in Missouri's first congressional district, which encompasses St. Louis City, County, and it also includes Ferguson. And this is really the epicenter of the Black Lives Matter movement. Back in 2014, right, activists like Cori, stood in the streets for more than 400 consecutive days in response to Darren Wilson's acquittal over the murder of Mike Brown. And since then, St. Louis, and over the past decade, has continued to struggle with violence, especially on police shootings. But it's also, at least within the city, there's a 20-year life expectancy gap, right, between white and Black people. And so that is sort of the context of what's happening in the city conditions-wise. And then you have a political dynasty, a family that's been in power for over 50 years, and referencing this congressional seat, and was a pretty key pillar in the Black establishment. And so just in this moment, right, seeing what's happened with the pandemic, just really putting on the accelerator, unfortunately, all of our previously undealt with problems across our economy and our society, it's really clear to voters what it means to rise in this moment, what it means to be a leader. And Cori Bush, throughout her entire life, has demonstrated that by being like I said, back in 2014, being out on the streets for over 400 days with a ton of other amazing St. Louis young leaders, and a registered nurse, an ordained pastor, a single mom, someone who got COVID and survived it and kept going, who lost before and kept going. I'm in utter awe of the tenacity of Cori Bush. And
well, I didn't know she had COVID-19.
Or she had COVID-19 symptoms.
She had to go through that. Wow. It's an amazing story because so here you have someone who was one of the key activists around Mike Brown's murder there in Ferguson. And as you said, she ran 2 years ago, lost, decided to come back. I'm sure everybody was telling her this year, why? I mean, it was clear you couldn't do it in 18. And look who you're going up against. You're going up against a 19-year incumbent, William Lacey Clay. His dad had held the seat for 30 years, I think, right? Before that?
Yeah.
Okay, so since 1969, father and son have run this district, have owned it. So her chance of winning, let's just be honest. If you and I were doing this conversation, 3 days ago, before the election, I'm sure you would have been very upbeat and hopeful. And you probably knew because you'd been on the ground. So you knew that actually you had an excellent chance. But to somebody like myself or somebody not there, it would just be like, oh, she's going to have to lose again. Oh. and then boom. And I mean, boom. I mean, this is exactly when AOC defeated the, he was like here in New York, it was like the fourth in line there amongst the Democratic leadership, back in 2018 in Congress, and tossed him out. The people tossed him out and put her in. So this was an amazing thing that happened in St. Louis, and she doesn't represent just Ferguson. I mean, she represents a large part of St. Louis and the area there. And they decided just 2 years later, after saying they didn't want her, we need her now. Now, 2020, this is who we have to send to Congress, Cori Bush.
Yeah, I mean, they don't, when people say they don't have a chance, it's because, until we do something about it. And that's what I hope is a huge takeaway from this race for our movement. This should have been, in a lot of ways, very easy in the sense of the backdrop that we just laid, right? That makes this moment so monstrous and historic. And folks like Cori really, really deserve it. And there are going to be more. Our future is very bright when it comes to the bench of people that we have that, like Cori, have gone through so much, but are so ready to get in the fight. And that's why we exist, and so many other institutions like the Sunrise Movement and Data for Progress and all of these other key national organizations that couple with these local movements that are happening on the ground, that despite, not having the resources, although in this case we were able to, gather those together quickly at the very end, put folks over the top. And so just again, to reemphasize, it's not just in New York, it's in Missouri, and it can be in every part of the country. It doesn't have to just be the AOC once in a lifetime candidates. We can work for it together. So I think that's a really hopeful thing I'm trying to take out of this, and looking forward to Alex Morse coming up, Cara Eastman, who's running out in Nebraska, who we're going to unseat, Don Bacon, who's a Republican down there. So I'm really looking forward to translating the momentum.
But you've been unseating Democrats who've been maybe in office a bit too long, and who are not understanding what time it is that we're in. That's and right. I like you said, I think the huge takeaway from Tuesday is, and I want people who are listening right now, wherever you're listening to this around the country, and even if you're not in this country, thank you for listening, by the way. Thank you for caring about us Americans. But I know there are people right now, you've had this member of Congress in there a bit too long, and is not as responsive as he needs to be. Usually he, if I can use that pronoun, I think that would be inaccurate regarding the people we're talking about. And you have to not think any longer that this can't happen, that we can't ever run somebody and actually win. This happened in a red state, as Alexandra just said. This didn't happen in New York City yesterday. It happened in Missouri. If it can happen there, it can happen in your district. I mean, I hope people are hearing what you're saying here, because not only, as you said, is an earthquake. The New York Times, I think, said something I was listening to earlier. They called it a landslide in Detroit for Rashida Tlaib. Rashida won her primary 2 years ago by 900 votes. She had to run against the same person again this time. That her opponent was the president of the Detroit City Council, a well-known political person in Detroit. This time, Rashida did not win by 900 votes over her opponent. She won by, I think it was almost 30,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
30,000 votes. She won 60,000 votes to 30,000 votes. A landslide, a massive affirmation of her in Congress. And knowing her and what she's had to go through, I was with her the night we were traveling around Iowa for Bernie, and somebody had mentioned Hillary's name on the stage. They were having a discussion. There's like 5,000 people there. And when Hillary's name was mentioned, Rashida just cathartically she doesn't have the filter that was put inside of most of us that shouldn't be there, and we should work on getting that filter out of there as much as possible. She just boos. She just hears Hillary's name and she just goes boo. And man, that was everywhere on the internet and in the media for days and days. And people telling her, this is why you're going to lose. This is why you're going to lose. You're not a team player. You are, pro-Palestinian. You're this or that. She is Palestinian, so it's hard to be not pro-Palestinian. She's Palestinian American. But and yet here we are celebrating her victory this week. What was your reaction to that? Because Rashida is also known for on the night that she was sworn into Congress, they were having a big victory party there in D.C. and you might have been there actually. She took to the microphone and made her pronouncement about Trump's impeachment, the F-bomb moment.
Yeah.
Bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't. Because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the motherfucker.
So tell us, what does this victory for Rashida mean?
Rashida, at least in my opinion, I'm sure many other people know this just by the way that what she exuberates, but she's one of the fiercest campaigners, like set aside progressive or not. She's just one of the fiercest campaigners I've ever met. And she's serious. She knocks on every door. She engages every person in her district, whether they agree with her or not. And she has worked nonstop the past couple of years to build up her constituent services. And so I think it may be a shock to folks that have doubted her, but it's very clear that she has not only embodied like so much of America and her district, I think also just what she means for this country.
She's a beloved figure in Detroit and throughout the state of Michigan. We've known her for a long time. When I was writing a couple days ago, encouraging people to get out and vote for her, I said she has led so many civil disobedience demonstrations in and around Detroit that she's been arrested more times than I've made movies. She's like,
she's such a badass.
She's so badass and fierce. That's a great word. She is fierce, but it's not for show. She does exactly what you just said. I mean, I've gone door to door with her. You can't keep up with her, first of all, but she knocks on every door. Her goal is to knock on every door in the district and then start over and knock a second time. And she will stand there and talk to people. She'll listen to their problems. She'll have an idea of where they can get some help. The day that she dragged me along, I loved how she just dealt with everybody. And you're right. If they weren't for her, if they were going to vote Republican, she hugged them just as hard as she hugged anybody. Her district, it's the third poorest district in the country. It is it's 60 to 70% African American. She's not African American. She's Palestinian American. And African Americans gone to the polls now twice to say that this is who they want representing them. And it's very moving when you see this interaction. And if you lived in Detroit, let me tell you, the level of despair that exists, the sense of we're never going to climb out of this hole that they've shoved us down in. The cavalry is not coming to save us. And, so many people just in 2016 in Detroit and Flint decided not to vote, the sense of giving up. I don't know if you've seen this around the country, Alexandra, but there are those places where people have given up. And she will not let you give up. And she lets you know that she's fighting for you. She doesn't represent a district of Palestinian Americans, although there is a large, it's the part of Detroit that butts up to Dearborn, which has probably per capita, the largest Arab or Muslim community in the country. But she's there for everybody and she pours her whole heart and soul into it. It's an amazing thing to witness. If you're a Michigander, you already know this. If you're not, pay close attention to what she's going to be doing with her second term. That's what I'd say.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, like in terms of the significance of her not just winning re-election, but winning it decisively, needs to put to rest the notion that, progressives can't represent places like the Midwest and that folks like Rashida are vulnerable or out of touch with ordinary Americans, when in fact that they're deeply representative of the spirit of where America is at right now. So I think it's huge, her winning.
So there's all that going on. I know there's things going on with state houses. I know some people in Michigan that won their primary, very progressive people. If they win in November, it'll be very good for the state of Michigan. But I started hearing from friends all around the country here in the last 24 hours about the good things that happened in their areas. You mentioned a couple of people earlier that you're looking forward to here, either in the near future, or tell us about other potential congressional districts that progressives have a chance of winning.
Yeah, I think, we've got the next and last primary of the cycle is Alex Morse out in Missouri's 1st district, at least for our slate at Justice Democrats. And so that's where all of our focus and energy is over the next 3 weeks. His election is on September 1st, and he's going up against Richard Neal, who is corporate America's favorite congressperson. He is I think he's number 2 in being the highest recipient of corporate dollars of any congressperson, Democrat or Republican. He also is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, which, I believe has jurisdiction over pretty much every program that's tied to taxes. And when we think about funding universal health care, when we think about, all of the different bills that we're going to need to pass for the projects associated with the Green New Deal, it's going to go through that committee. So the direction of what we do there is pretty fundamental to where we want to go with at least those 2 examples of issues. And Richard Neal has been in staunch opposition to Medicare for All. He doesn't like it uttered in the chamber. And he also recently, within the pandemic, where you've heard about stories where folks are getting $35,000, $75,000 medical bills after getting COVID treatment, he's killed surprise medical bill or legislation that would remove surprise medical billing, even in the midst of what's happening right now and within the Democratic Party. And so again, like the importance of backing people that not just say, I support healthcare access and rhetoric, but being very specific about, advocating for single payer universal Medicare for all in this moment. And that's where Alex Morse, he's gotten the support of Massachusetts nurses, which is, I think it's like the largest nurses union in Massachusetts. And so that's huge for us and for our movement, I think, to really set the tone heading into 2021, right? When we think about when hopefully Biden defeats Trump, and having not just Jamal and Cori, who are incredible that we've sent them there, but it will be really, really incredible if we can, switch the direction of this committee that is, pretty key to unlocking some of our key priorities. So I think that's the importance of Alex's race right now.
So this is Alex Morse, and this is where in Massachusetts? Massachusetts
1st District.
And that encompasses which cities?
Alex is currently the mayor of Holyoke, and he's been mayor for about 8 years now.
That part of Massachusetts, yeah.
Yeah, and born and raised. And so Springfield, Berkshire area.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So, and what do you think the chances are?
I think we're going to win.
Oh.
But I think we only win if we and everybody listening in put in the work to do it. And right now, Nancy Pelosi actually dropped this morning alongside Richard Neal an ad talking about how fierce of a leader he is in fighting Trump in Congress, and Neal himself is starting to, what looks like, at least of what's public, starting to spend a little bit more. They're nervous. They see us coming twice now, right. And so I think that means that even though I think we're doing an incredible job across all facets of the campaign, we've got a lot to make up from the fact that, he's corporate America's favorite congressperson. And we've the only way you defeat a machine like that, right, is with a movement. So I think that's where we're focused on.
Right. So just for people keeping score at home, Neal, the incumbent congressman, is a Democrat. When Alexandra says this is corporate America's favorite congressman, she's talking about a Democrat. We have a number of these corporate Democrats who are in Congress and who are not necessarily representing the will of the people. They're representing the will of their backers. They're representing the will of Wall Street. And so Alex is going up against somebody who they never would have thought would have any trouble getting reelected 10 more times. And now all of a sudden, here comes the AOC of Massachusetts. Here comes the Rashida of Springfield. So yes, anybody, you can tell them I called them that live, speaking to a few 100,000 people. But seriously, folks, if you have any family, friends, people who live in Western Massachusetts, this is one of the nicest actually areas of the country, not just in terms of its beauty and culture and, a dozen universities in a very small confined area, but it's also the good people of Western Massachusetts. And they are not, their values, their politics, what they believe in, the way they want to see this country work and come out of this pandemic as a different place, a good place. That person who's representing them right now in Congress, he is not doing that. And so that means they're not being represented.
Yeah.
Pure and simple.
Absolutely.
So yes. So I second what Alexandra said about if you live there, please get involved in the campaign right now. The date of the election is September 1st, right?
It's September 1st. And if you don't live there, you can go to alexmorseforcongress.com and send them $1, $2, $5, $50, whatever you got, because it's gonna take a lot to topple someone that's got a lot of these resources. So volunteer if you're in the district, and if you're out of the district and you don't have much time, even $1 really does help.
So if you want to give to Alex Morse to bring down this corporate congressman, you go online at Alex Morse, ALEXMORSE for Congress, spell it out, for Congress.com. Help them out if you're there. Hey, even if you're not in Western Mass and you're taking all the social and health precautions that you need to take right now, beautiful place to spend the last couple weeks of your summer in Western Mass. It really is. So if you have a safe way to do that, think about going there and helping. We can get one more seat in Congress. Speaking of one more seat, Jamal Bowman in the Bronx, in New York, Bronx, and I think maybe a little bit of Westchester County, won the primary. He beat, how long was Elliot Engel, Democrat, representing the Bronx and Westchester there?
I believe 31 years.
Jamal, who I believe had never been elected to anything, but was very involved in his community and knew what was going on, decided to take him on and beat him. And again, not by 10 votes. I mean, beat him. And it was just like, you go, wow, there's something going on here. And everybody should pay attention to this, because none of these corporate Democrats, the people that have been around forever, voting the same way on these issues that makes it look like they're doing some nice things and they're good liberals and, this and that, but we're still stuck. Why do we still have a $7.25 minimum wage? Why are so many African Americans and Hispanics incarcerated in this country? Why do the police keep on killing black men? Why? And, during this time, for at least 8 years, we had a Democrat in the White House. And for the first 2 years of his administration, the Democrats controlled both houses of Congress. And we can't get squat done. And I think, Alexandra, isn't this one of the reasons Justice Democrats came about? Because it's like, man, if we are sitting around waiting for the DNC, the Democratic Party, to save us, that's just not going to happen, folks.
Yeah,
We need to get involved and save ourselves.
that's absolutely right. And I think, if we are ever to get to a place like you referenced before, to Democratic majorities, which we've had the opportunity to do big things on healthcare, and we have taken giant steps, but haven't gone all the way, it's going to be ever more important, the role of Justice Democrats in Congress, to push to pass, obviously pass big pieces of legislation, but I think actually implement them and hold leadership, hold all the tops of the ticket accountable. And so that is going to be, hopefully we get we win the Senate, we win the House, we win the presidency, and that's the reality that we face. And now more than ever, the pressure is mounting to deliver, and progressives have to be, the ones that, as clearly as demonstrated right now in Congress, it's very difficult to do that, and it's very difficult to imagine right now, right, a world where we do have Democratic majorities when we have Trump in the White House and Mitch McConnell controlling the Senate. But if we're able to get to that point, the role of Justice Democrats and what we're building in Congress is so important. Regardless, it is, but especially if we get to a point where we have another moment like we did back when discussions around Obamacare and Medicare for all were being had.
So Justice Democrats have to be involved, not just in electing people to office, but once in office, then the organization that has to happen, the organizing and pulling together millions and millions of Americans to demand these changes. That if we end up with this, I hate to say when we end up with this Democratic House, Democratic Senate, and a Democrat in the White House, that we can't sit back and think it's just going to magically happen. Walk us through, run down essentially the platform of Justice Democrats in terms of the reason that you're helping and you've been helping these candidates run and win is because Justice Democrats wants to see certain things happen in this country, and especially in our Congress. Just walk us through some of the really important things that you've been advocating.
Yeah, I mean, we're working to elect this mission-driven caucus in the House that's going to fight for bold, progressive solutions that match the scope and scale of our crises. And I think really laying out how big the problems are, especially in the way that we've responded to this pandemic as a country in comparison to the industrialized world, we feel is incredibly necessary just to connect that concept with the urgency of this moment. And I think failed leadership being really highlighted. And then use that to talk about big ideas like a Green New Deal, where we re-envision our economy by centering those that we've historically left out, like Indigenous folks, Black and Brown communities, frontline communities that are going to be most deeply impacted. And we turn our greatest existential threat into our greatest opportunity. We rebuild, we rebuild the economy of the future, truly. And that's a whole conversation, right, with all these different policies that go within that. I think for Medicare for All has been huge, and working alongside allies like National Nurses United and the entire coalition of the Medicare for All working group has done so much to lay the groundwork again for moments where we have to really push public opinion to on these issues, and obviously the unfortunate circumstances highlight why we need universal health care deeply. I think democracy reform is pretty big as well. When we think about our campaign finance system, when we think about the ability for voters to access the voting booth, or even to be able to have the ability to vote in this country, is huge. We could go on and on, I think, with the laundry list of things that we're fighting for, the full universal style. But I think the big thing that we do that's different is that we recruit candidates that come from their communities, that are diverse, that are working class, that represent, the extraordinary, ordinary aspect of regular working people, that are, heroes in their own right, whether they're nurses or principals or union workers. There's all of these, there's thousands of them across the country. And their lived experiences is what inform them on how they fight so hard. And they're accountable, right, to a movement, local, in the case of Cori, right, the local Black Lives Matter movement and national one, and us also, folks like the Sunrise Movement who have championed the Green New Deal, and folks like us who are also, contributing on the national movement side. So.
When you're recruiting, how do you do that? I mean, how are you looking for and finding the people that you think should run for office, and how do you approach them? How do you try to convince them? They might not have even been thinking about ever running for office.
Yeah, I mean, our current political system is not set up for working people to be able to have an easy time to make the decision on whether or not to run for office. And so a lot of the feedback that we get from, working people, because I think that there's all these people that do want to run that are incredible, or they're at least interested in the idea if maybe they don't want to run, because a lot of times they actually don't, they need to be pushed. But it's infrastructure problems, right? Like, do I have the resources to do this? It's concerns about the toll that it's going to take personally and on their family, the incumbency challenging, especially for primary challenges, challenging the power structures that be within the Democratic Party and what's on the Hill. And so all of those things are really mounting, but we try to implement a lot of different ways to recruit candidates, but the foundation is, if you go to our website, like literally right now, justicedemocrats.com/nominate, we want everybody to send in folks that have been, that they feel like are leaders in their families, in their communities, in their workspaces, just all different parts of our economy and society that are doing these extraordinary, ordinary things. And then what we use that form to spread the word to on through paid means. Like, we tested it out this past cycle where we put up, a nomination ad in a local newspaper in Texas, and Jessica Cisneros' old high school teacher saw it and nominated her. We do a lot of local power mapping just to get a sense of like what the issues are important in a district. And we literally start like 4 or 5 months out, even before we find a candidate, just to get to know what folks care about. And so it's pretty detailed, at least from the amount of time that we have to spend, I think, to be able to move quickly on just talking to as many folks as possible about who is doing the work, quote unquote, in whatever, issue area is really important to folks. And, in the case of Jamal Bowman, his name came up, repeatedly as someone that has been just recognized in the progressive movement statewide in New York, especially around education. And then we do our own prioritization too, right? Like, we do our own assessment of like qualitative, quantitative data, the narrative of the district, and then make our internal prioritizations, just because we're still small dollar. Our average contribution is about $17. So we're very mindful of where we're able to weigh in and really make a difference.
And are most of you young adults that are organizing this and helping to run it?
Our oldest staffer is over 70. So it's not just young people, and we've got folks that are within our 40s, 50s. But a lot of us are young at the same time. We're a small but mighty team. I think we've got like 17 people now.
I just remember back in 2018 feeling really old because it was so cool to see, how many young people were really.
Oh, absolutely.
Out there and doing this and really thinking smartly about how we can win. It's a lot of liberals aren't really kind of engaged in that concept of strategy like that. And it's, but
I'm 25. Like, the adults are not in the room. So I've had to, I feel we've all felt compelled to act. It's been pretty cool to see Varshney at, the Sunrise Movement, and Sochi, who just started at the New York Working Families Party, and just all of these different leaders throughout the movement, especially young women of color leaders who are taking up really big pieces of infrastructure to support these candidates and put them over the top.
If somebody's listening to this right now, they're in North Carolina, they're in Oklahoma, they're in Wisconsin, and they're thinking to themselves right now, I think I need to be recruited. Somebody needs to, I want to be part of it. I want to run for office.
Yeah.
I can be the AOC of Wisconsin. It's what do you say to them? I'm talking literally, I know right now people are listening to this, and I know some of them are thinking, damn it, why not me? I should do this.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say two things. And I know a lot of times everyone is like, for the first time, run for office, you have to do it. I'm actually the person that's like, I want to assess the situation, is one thing, like on a personal level, because a lot of, it is really hard to run for office. And I take, as much as I criticize incumbents, going to become an elected official is incredibly difficult, and to run for office, even with the support of organizations like us, takes a lot. And so to really think about that even in general. And then secondly, for folks that have either thought about it, but they're hesitant on it, or you are thinking of, not yourself, but maybe other folks in your community that have, transformed your life or your friends or your family's life in one way or another, whether they're a retail worker or they're leading a hospital or a school. Those folks, it doesn't take very much. You can go to our nomination form. You should send them in. And moments like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and AOC, I think, should show that it's worth taking that risk. And it also doesn't just have to be at the federal level. It can be, there's like over 5,000 offices throughout the entire United States. And there's so many places where, from school board to state house, we need to have contested. So
I know something that I'm thinking about, and I think about it every day, and I think a lot of people listening to this are thinking about it, is that we have a Democratic candidate for president. He's not the one that I supported, and my friends didn't support. In fact, honestly, God, if we could go back in the time tunnel, and 2 weeks before Super Tuesday, I don't think you could have found anybody who said that they were supporting Joe Biden. I mean, I'm not saying it to be disrespectful. I mean, literally, I was out there on the road in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and it was amazing. You could not find, first of all, you couldn't find Biden because he wasn't out there campaigning. And then you couldn't find Biden supporters. And then it just within 3 days, the thing turned around, and all of a sudden he's the presidential nominee. So what do we do? What do we say about this? Because Trump has to go. And I don't know how there can be any ifs, ands, or buts around that. But you still hear from people that just, they feel just awful about, Bernie not making it. And then you hear from people who have very legitimate concerns, either concerns about Biden or legitimate complaints about his history, his political history. What's your take on this? Because, what you're working toward doesn't work unless we need all three branches to fix the damage that's been done by Trump, and actually damage that was done before Trump, to fix all this and to take us into a new place. We need a real leader that's like an FDR type leader, a Bernie type leader. And I don't think anybody really sees that, and are just, sort of hemming and hawing us. Well, there's this new site that's up now called Settle for Biden. And you take a pledge that you've decided to settle for Biden, and you're going to get out there and vote. It's like, wow, that's the bar.
Yeah.
So Alexandra, take us through this, because this is a very important discussion. I'm sure you have it every day.
Yeah. I'm incredibly empathetic to folks that I have so many disagreements with Joe Biden. And it's not that I want to be in a fear-based mindset, but Trump is really the most corrupt president in American history. And if we're thinking about the pathway to power and our North Star being the policy that we're trying to implement, our ability so far in moving Biden, at least with one example of going from 2050 to 2035 in his climate plan, it's not everything, but that is massive in terms of how far he's moved there. And, having to negotiate with progressives like Varshni and AOC to get there as opposed to Republicans. And I know that he's not in power now, but that just shows, again, in addition to Cori Bush and Jamal winning, he's having to negotiate with progressives on these issues. And the pressure is mounting. And like I was sort of alluding to before, the work that we do is ever more important when Joe Biden wins. And it's necessary for him to win because we need, again, to be able to pass the legislation that we want within our lifetime. And the level of danger that Trump possesses and the Republican Party possesses in their ability to, have what they will at our Supreme Courts and, court systems around the country we should really think about that as a movement. And so I think I look forward to holding Joe Biden accountable. There's been significant shifts of him right now that show that we're forcing him to the negotiating table. But we're going to have to be there for our Congress people next year, that to push them to continue to hold folks like Joe Biden accountable. And I think the pressure mounting, again, like you alluded to this, but it's not just having a vision and saying words that you support these things. It's about executing. It's about actually showing results and like fixing our national supply chain across all levels of our economy and society. And that takes a lot of work and like leadership, like you said. That it's going to be on Democrats to hold our own feet to the fire if we see ourselves in power.
It's just the national supply structure and everything else that we have to fix. I know it seems daunting, doesn't it? Coming out of 4 years of Trump, but also to me, it's exhilarating to think about the possibility here of what could happen. And even Joe Biden in his own redemption, think back to that moment where he blurts out on that Sunday morning show about, that secretly he knows that Obama is against prohibiting gay Americans from getting married. And all of a sudden that thing a few months later, the Supreme Court, it just happened. It just happened. And it happened because of Joe Biden's kind of weird, innocent, faux pas, basically. And then all of a sudden everybody was talking about it. And then all of a sudden then it happened. I don't know. Am I being too optimistic here when I think that even somebody like Joe Biden can turn toward the light? Can be an unlikely hero and take us out of this mess? Or
I always try to push back on anyone. I think being a hero right now, like you said earlier, I think that it's ourselves and it's the movement that put people into office that hold them accountable. And with the conditions right now, with the pandemic, and the protests that have swept the country after the murders of George Floyd and so many other Black men and women, it's really, really, really difficult to be fake right now when we have the realness of Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. That is what's going to be on the congressional floor. That's what's going to be able to go on with the courage of a movement behind them. And so again, and it's not just, and this is for Joe Biden too, he'll be president and dealing with a lot of other stuff, but is going to be thinking about the party. Like we need to be able to have these discussions legislatively. We've proven ourselves by putting candidates like Cori Bush, like Jamal Bowman into the halls of Congress. Now I hope that the Democratic Party, that leadership hears them out. and here's what their constituents sent them on a mandate to do. And if they can't do that, then we're going to have those conversations electorally and continue to mount these challenges and normalize primaries and really, instill the will of the people. Because in this case, like, these policies are popular, and we've demonstrated on numerous occasions with limited resources against everything that we can do it. And so that they've got to listen at some point. So I think you're right.
If they don't listen this time, if the Democrats don't listen, then it behooves all of us to, this is why you're building this movement. This is why it has to be a big movement, because we will not be silent. We don't tell us 1 month after the administration, after you take over and tell us to keep it quiet. We got to take our time. We got to be measured about this. No, we will be in the streets again. We will be organizing against you. If you're in Congress and you're not there following the will of the people, you're going to be out in 2 years. They need to know that. They need to know that we will be relentless. And as you said, like about Rashida, we will be fierce. We will be heard. We will not be ignored. Again, we're not going to go have a replay of President Obama's first 2 years where we were supposed to all sing Kumbaya and try to get along with the Republicans or whatever. Absolutely not. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else other than me and anybody else who's listening to this and who agrees with that.
Yeah. Cori Bush is the 5th challenger backed by Justice Democrats to unseat an incumbent. She organized a movement through pepper spray and rioting police in the streets of Ferguson, and her tenacity and her pursuit of justice is incredibly needed in Congress today. And this was made possible because of everyday people and our belief in the collective solidarity of everyday people when they come together, being able to do damn near anything. And so if you all are interested in supporting our work, go to justicedemocrats.com. Check us out. We just actually redid our website so you can learn all about us and see all of the work we've been doing over the past couple of years and see if it's worth something investing your time in. But I'm feeling extremely hopeful about the future because of folks like Cori and Jamal, even in what is an incredibly dark time in our country with Donald Trump at the helm of it. And unfortunately, the pandemic of Black and brown lives and globally what's happening. So.
Well, that's beautifully put. And I endorse what you're doing 100%. And we've needed this. We've needed you and your friends who are doing this. We've needed you for a long time. Thank you for coming to the forefront there a few years ago. And now again, in this very important year, thank you for what you did to help elect some progressives this past Tuesday. And please keep up the good work. And those of you who are listening, go to their website, justicedemocrats.com. Look it up. Think about it. Think about people in your community that should be running. You know people right now. You've thought about this. I get that person should be our state rep. And sometimes it is a middle school principal. Sometimes it's a vet. Sometimes it's a vet or a vet. Like a veterinary doctor or a veteran from the armed forces, somebody who's come back, somebody who's seen the truth about what's going on. Sometimes it's a single mom, more single moms in Congress, more single moms in the State House, all that. So Alexandra, I'm just so grateful for the work you've done and that you continue to do. And we'll keep in touch. We're less than 90 days now to the November 3rd election. And we're going to be putting out some of our ideas here about all the things we need to be doing to bring a tsunami of voters to the polls on November 3rd. So thank you, Alexandra. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you who've listened to this episode of Rumble with Michael Moore. Much appreciated. Thanks to our executive producer, Basil Hamden, our editor and sound engineer, Nick Quaz, and to all the people who've been supporting us. We just surpassed the 14 millionth mark of downloads and listens here in just our few short months that we've been putting Rumble together. 14 million of you have downloaded this this podcast. That's just an amazing thing. I thank all of you. I thank you for joining us. Subscribe to it. It's free. Tell people about us. Pass us around. Send me an email. I read all my emails, mike@michaelmoore.com, or leave a voicemail. I've got a look for the thing where it says leave a voicemail. You can leave a 1-minute voicemail. I listen to all my voicemails. So I'd love to hear from you. Thanks. We've got a lot of work to do, and we will succeed. I firmly believe this. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.